social, music, talk.
Far too many FM rock stations were staffed by people who had never known professionalism at, say, AM Top 40,
Right.
especially. If you're a professional and you're looking at the record library, whether you get a request on the telephone or not, a professional is going to pull a record that they don't particularly like because they know people in the audience want to hear.
Yeah, if it's a hit.
What's that?
If it's a hit.
It doesn't have to be a hit.
Well, for
It
your
just
station.
has to be something that I personally don't much care for. But, all right.
Did you use the
Don't fear
charts?
the Reaper. Blue Oyster Cult. Don't fear
Right.
the Reaper. All right?
Made number 12 on the pop chart, but a
I don't
huge,
care about numbers.
huge bigger number
I don't
on
care
the,
about numbers.
but on the rock world, it's huge.
I don't care. The phone rings all the time. People want to hear it.
Right.
Okay. I don't particularly care for it myself, but I play it because I'm a professional.
Right.
Not playing only what I want to hear. And too many FM rock stations, you can call them freeform, you can call them album-oriented rock, whatever terminology you like. You have people working there who are not professionals, who play what they want to hear, and they refuse to play anything that they don't happen to like, even though there are a huge number of people in the audience who want to hear Stairway to Heaven again.
Right. And that's why it keeps getting played.
But you have to guard against overplay.
That's true. And did you have that rule there?
Guarding against overplay would seem to be a fairly simple matter that really wasn't very well addressed until, in my own experience, until KSJO with a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper on the back of the album cover indicating when it was last played.
Okay.
Simple paper solution.
So then you trusted that everyone wrote that down and didn't
Sure.
forget.
And you grab it and you look at it and say, somebody played it yesterday. Yeah, maybe not today.
But it wasn't that hard of a decision to decide, right? What, should I play this again just because it got played 2 hours ago on the last show?
Oh, no. Not if it got played 2 hours ago.
Okay. So you had to avoid being like Top 40.
Oh, not for that particular reason. You're talking about polarization now.
Well, if you're talking about playing what the audience wants to hear, and, it usually means playing a lot of hits over and over and over again.
Not at the KSJO of the 1970s.
So
no.
that's what I want to know is how much of it was familiar hit material versus album cuts that you might have wanted to mix in that wasn't that familiar.
My wild guess is that we played from among several thousand.
Wow. Okay.
Things on the wall. Thousands, yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to get esoteric, particularly late at night, and I don't mean midnight to 6, I mean 1800 to midnight, let's say, which is when I usually worked. That was the prime shift in those days because the audience was laying on their living room floor, stoned out of their minds, listening to Moody Blues and Pink Floyd.
Coming home from work.
Okay. No. People didn't have FM radios in their cars at that time.
Right. You had to hook it up to a toaster or something, right? Like some weird hookup.
They existed, but not enough in the early 70s.
Right.
There was no concept of drive time on FM as there is on AM.
And no pressure from the ratings, right? Like there was Hooper ratings, but Arbitron wasn't.
Of course we had pressure from the ratings.
Really? Okay.
Of course. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
KSJO San Jose had great ratings.
Okay.
Playing rock on FM far more professionally than KSAN or KMPX.
Okay, but you had to be careful to not get too freeform, right? That's my question.
No, it depends upon the time of day.
Okay.
As I started to say, between 1800 and 6 o'clock in the morning, that half of the day, that 12 hours, you could hear 15 minutes of Firesign Theatre. You could hear Lord Buckley.
What about a full George Carlin album?
Not Carlin. No, not comedy.
Okay.
I mean, Firesign Theatre is certainly comedy,
Right.
but Firesign Theatre had production elements that were not just one guy in a stand-up comedy. Well, we played a lot of Firesign Theatre at various times at KSJO. We'd play.
Did you play Frank Zappa, Mothers of
Oh
Invention?
yeah, sure.
Okay, because they had a lot of obscure stuff beyond what did get played on rock radio. And I just wondered,
Well, we didn't
how
play
obscure would you get?
terribly obscure from Frank
Okay.
Zappa, but you'd be. I'm guessing you'd be surprised at the kind of stuff that we played at KSJO at various years. Now, it changed from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
And there were attempts at, well, you will play one of the first 5 or 6 of these 3x5 index cards.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will play this kind of thing, that kind of thing. Basically, pretty much ignored it.
Okay.
Personally.
So the program director didn't watch everyone like a hawk to make sure they were doing a certain format.
I don't know. They may have watched other jocks, but they basically trusted me.
Okay.
And that's the most important thing if you're, and I've been a program director at 2 different stations. If you're hiring people, you don't really want to be draconian about follow this system. What you want to do is hire people who are given the freedom to do whatever they want, professional enough to do the right thing anyway.
And so that's a big difference from then and now. We're in a different era now where the jock doesn't have much freedom and the jock's just a one-word name. Like I heard a guy coming over here calling himself Adam, and that was it. Didn't you have full
We had a
names
guy
back
at
then?
KSJO, worked late nights when I first got there before I started to own that shift, who called himself a friend.
Okay.
Why? Because he was also working an after job up in San Francisco for some much bigger station, and he wasn't allowed to use that name.
A friend.
He actually wanted to fly under the radar. He didn't even want them to know that he was working there also.
Okay. So was it common for people to make up names back then? Radio
Yes
names?
and no. Yes and no. Some did, some didn't.
How about your time at KOME? You were it was AOR then in 72 to
Yeah.
73, and you were a PD there.
Yeah, at one point for a while before it was sold to the people who became Infinity.
Right. So how was it different? It played rock, but how would you compare KOME then with KSJO of that era?
KSJO was first, best, in my opinion. KOME came along a little later, wanted to be a little weirder, was a little less professional in my opinion, but in the case of Dennis Erectus, for example, very high quality. Now, I never knew Dennis, didn't work with him, but personality-wise, I think he's one of the only KOME people. Of course, I would mention Lobster.
Okay.
Was also at KSJO. Worked with him at KSJO. I didn't work with him at KOME, but he had been there. KOME, I'm not quite sure why they hired me, but my favorite theory is that they wanted to fatten the station up for auction in order to get a higher price for it from people who bought it.
Okay.
That's a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like
I
how
had
they
a-
fix up used cars, sell them for much more.
Yeah. I had a music system there that basically had some scratch paper, write down everything you play, and indicate whether it's a yellow dot, green dot, or red dot.
Right. Color
Or
coded.
blue dot. Yeah, I had little Avery color dots that I put on the album. And I simply reviewed these scratch papers like a report card, and I rubber stamped them A, B, C, D, and F.
So that era, 72, 73, you know, the Nixon, Watergate years, was there a lot of politics on your station, you know, going along with the whole social movement, social change movement?
Not much.
Okay.
Individual jocks would comment to some extent sometimes on various things. I can recall an effort in, I think, California legislature to somewhat decriminalize marijuana in the more like early 70s. And I think we had a PSA copy regarding this, suggesting that you call your appropriate legislator to urge them to vote in favor of it. And after reading that on one occasion, I added that you should especially call Representative, I don't remember his name, so-and-so, because he's most likely to be opposed to it. Well, his office heard that, and they got into a big uproar and demanded an apology, and I refused to apologize. I just clarified it.
Well, that's good press, right?
Say again?
That could get you good press, right?
Oh, any publicity is good? Well, not always.
Well, I know that that's not true, but as far as marijuana with the audience, the young audience, that's good press.
Oh, sure. It was obvious that.
Good for the station, good publicity. Yeah. So,
Sure.
like, what about protest songs? Did you ever get pressure from the FCC? I thought they sent out a list in the early 70s or a threat to stay away from certain type of lyrics.
Are you talking about the 7 words?
That's part of it. That was 73 at the Pacifica Foundation in New York, WBAI. They resolved that in 78. The station lost that case to the Supreme Court.
Well, George Carlin is most notable for talking about it.
Right, so you're right.
Well, Lenny Bruce also, I think.
You're right. So what about that? Or records that were anti-war, was there any pressure not to play that kind of stuff?
No.
Okay. In fact,
Not
there's
at KSJO,
probably
not anywhere that I can
enthusiasm to play it, right?
Not so much.
I mean, you had Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Ohio, those kind of songs. Did you play a lot of that kind of stuff?
Not overly.
Okay.
And no pressure to not do so.
All right. So it wasn't really the focus of the station, any of the stations you worked at in that era?
No.
Okay.
It
was more about music.
Neutral. Totally neutral, non-committal. Don't recall much of any management pressure one way or another about it.
Okay. What about the audience? Did you talk much with the audience, like over the phones or meeting it?
Constantly.
Okay.
Constantly. I tried to be on the phone as much as possible. And that's another thing about professionals versus, we're getting into polarization now, broadcast professionals versus the uninitiated who wander into FM rock stations wanting to play what they want to hear.
Social music.